Hey there, I'm Yankel, and today we're gonna make a pork sirloin, and we're gonna do it from frozen. So I'm gonna grab it out of the freezer, and then I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. All right. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is actually run it under some cold water so that I can remove the plastic pretty easily. I don't actually need it to defrost. We're gonna go all the way up. Literally a couple of seconds is all you need. And then I'm just gonna empty that water out. Terrific. All right, pork sirloin. What is it? Well, very similar to a pork loin, and in fact, a pork chop. The pork sirloin comes from the loin, but it's cut close to the shoulder. And really what that means is it gets a little bit more muscle tone, and what that means is flavor. So we're gonna look at the pork sirloin and we're gonna see it's got two colors basically, the darker pink and the lighter pink. Now the lighter pink is the loin and what you'd see with a typical pork chop. And the darker pink is actually the sirloin element coming up really close to the shoulder muscle. Now it is very tender, but it's also very lean. And lean means easy to overcook. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna combat that with a little bit of moisture in our pan. So we're gonna sear it from frozen, then we're gonna add a bunch of liquid to make it taste really good, but also steam. So I'm using a Dutch oven, and the key here for me is having a lid that closes completely so that we retain all that steam and all that moisture. I'm gonna preheat to a medium-high heat, and we're gonna use some high temperature oil, in this case, avocado oil. As soon as my range boots up, great. Let's go robot range. All right, medium-high heat, that's going. I'm gonna add a little bit of avocado oil. It does really well at high temperatures. I don't want the oil to burn because I don't want that burnt flavor, but I want it to really be able to sear the pork sirloin as quickly as possible. A little bit of oil just to coat the bottom of the pan. Now we're gonna hit this with some salt and pepper, and even the couple of seconds that I ran it underwater loosened up the surface enough where it's gonna absorb that seasoning. Now, the ButcherBox pork sirloin is actually two smaller pork sirloins packaged together. I'm just gonna cook them together as one. They will come apart as they cook, and then we're gonna wind up with actually two little pork sirloins that are gonna be beautiful to carve later. All sides, all sides. Great. Listening for that sizzle sound. We're not quite there yet. It's close. It's starting. All right, we're going in. No time to waste. I'm gonna choose the side that has the most surface area that's flat so I can get a sear started there. That's the money sound. Now the reason we're browning it first as much as possible is because browning adds a ton of flavor. When we brown meat, it's known as the Maillard reaction. We have this protein, heat, and amino acid interaction that creates flavor molecules. So the browning process is really key to adding elements of flavor that you wouldn't otherwise get. And then we're gonna kind of deglaze that with a little bit of liquid, and we're gonna add an onion just for that extra punch. While we let our pork sirloin sear, I'm gonna cut up the onion. Now, the onion is mostly to add flavor. I'm gonna go with medium to small chunks because I kind of want them to melt a little bit as the sauce grows and as the pork sirloin braises. So, right in half. We're gonna set it down, and now following the direction of the circles, but perpendicular to the actual lines in the onion. I'm going to cut thin slices. And I'm keeping the knife angled upwards so that it doesn't drag the slice of the onion through. And then I turn it in the other direction, and I'm just going to angle the knife in and make little cuts. This way I'm using the natural shape of the onion to cut it most effectively. So we're just going to check on this. Now in general, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes to build up some brown. Because it's frozen, there's a little bit more moisture on the surface, and we need to wait for that moisture to kind of steam off before the browning starts to happen. But with a high temperature, the oil basically evaporates all the water really quickly. And you can see wherever the sirloin made contact with the pan, we're getting that nice browning. Even though we're not going to brown the whole surface because of the frozen shape, it's still going to add a ton of flavor. So we're going to let that brown on the other side for a couple more minutes. I'm going to flip it one more time. Even as I'm browning that side, I move it to the side of the pan, and now I'm going to throw my onions right there in the bottom, let them start to brown up a little too. I think one of the beautiful things about pork sirloin versus a pork loin or your typical pork chop is really that it's cut from the sirloin, giving it that extra muscular flavor, and so you're not sacrificing any of the leanness or the tenderness, but you're actually getting more flavor. So if you treat it properly, it's definitely a better eating experience than your typical pork loin. And I'm going to stir these onions around because I want the onions to pick up all the little brown bits that are happening here at the bottom of the pan. Starting to smell real good. Nothing better than pork and onions. Oh yeah, look at that. Nice browning. So once I've got brown around most of the sides of the pork sirloin, what I'm going to do is deglaze the pan with some liquid. So I'm using basically 3 acidic elements, but a measure of sweetness as well. The first thing I'm using is balsamic vinegar. Really nice flavor, very sweet when it reduces. So what I'm going to do is add the balsamic vinegar first and let it cook down just a little bit. The acidity level will help tenderize the pork even more. It's going to add a tang that's going to counterbalance the orange juice, which is going to be a little bit sweeter. And then to finish it all off, to give the sauce some body, we're going to use some basic unflavored tomato sauce. And of course, all things that hopefully you have in your pantry at home. So you don't even need to shop for this recipe. And we can see in this pot, as the reduction happens, the bubbles in the balsamic vinegar begin to get larger and larger. And that's a sign that moisture is evaporating and that the sauce is reducing and the flavor is concentrating. All that sweetness is going to start to come out. And once I have medium-sized bubbles, comparative to what they were when I first put it in there, I'm going to add the next element. And we can see bubbles starting to get a little bit larger. Right now, the balsamic vinegar is basically reduced by half. So we're going in with OJ. As you can see, I'm measuring everything exactly. Not really. My basic method is 1/4 vinegar to 1/2 orange juice to a whole tomato sauce in any amount that you want. Give that a quick stir. Again, we'll let that reduce for about 1 minute, and then we'll add our tomato sauce. Bubbling nicely, a little bit of reduction happening. We're going in with our tomato sauce all the way around. Now I'm just going to stir that up. I'm going to flip this over. so that it's completely coated. Beautiful. We're gonna close that lid up. We're gonna lower the heat and we're gonna let it simmer on the stovetop for about an hour, at which point it will be tender and delicious. So I'm going to medium low. I will check on it periodically and give it a quick stir just to make sure nothing's burning on the bottom. Cool. See you in a bit. Our pork sirloin has simmered sufficiently. It's fully cooked. The sauce has come together. Let's open this baby up and see what we got. That's beautiful. Nice, rich tomato-based sauce. You get that tang from the vinegar and the juice. Really came together nicely. We're just gonna set these down on the board, slice them up, and then we'll pour our sauce all over them. These pork sirloins look amazing. Let's slice into them. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, beautiful. That low and slow simmer keeps them tender, juicy, all that humidity inside of the pan. Make sure they stay nice and moist. And you can see just from slicing it how tender it actually is. Just about ready to fall apart. But it's still pulling together like a roast, which is exactly what I wanted. We're gonna go right onto our platter. That's beautiful. A totally unappreciated, underappreciated cut. It's packed with flavor, super lean, super healthy, really easy to cook. All I can say is when it comes to pork sirloin, get a good sear, add a little bit of moisture, and contain the environment, and you're gonna have a dinner you will never forget. I'm Yankel. Go cook something delicious.